Oh, is it? Yeah, sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and call meeting to order. Go ahead and join me with pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is roll call. And we're all here, all council present. Any changes and additions to the agenda seen? Okay. All right. And on the agenda is, go ahead. We all good? Consent agenda is as shown in front of us.
We need to make an amendment to the September 13 City Council meeting minutes, which is page 9 of your packet. Under section C, City Manager Reach, B, City Manager Crichton. That's all.
I was enjoying motion though. I love it. This is so cool.
Okay, well, with the amendment of the consent to the September 13th minutes, we have a motion to accept, or want to break that down individually?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All right, I have a motion. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And moving on, we have some guest presentations, and we'll start with the Lynn County Sheriff's Office. Officer Frambis, is it Frambis? Frambis.
Close.
Is it Lieutenant?
Sergeant.
Sergeant, I get it straight.
A little different uniform today.
Yeah.
I'm a firearms instructor for the sheriff's office too. So I do a lot of training, everything from like people who've never shotgun before to building clearing, long range shooting, stuff like that. So it was a warm day out there today, warm and dusty. Couple things to go over. I didn't complete the report this month because I was on vacation on a hunting trip, so I wanted to make a couple edits when I was going through this. We had a few more warnings. I documented 9, and on the report it says 1. We actually had 2 in the report. So those arrests, we had a DUI from a traffic stop, and we made a shoplifting arrest. Some of the citations we did, 2 for driving while suspended, 2 expired registrations, 1 for not having a driver's license, and 4 for speeding. And then the DUI on top of the criminal arrest, he got a bunch of traffic violation citations as well. So a little bit of traffic. To highlight some of the property crimes, to me, we didn't have a super lengthy report, but we did have a lot of property crimes. We had bikes stolen, 2 vehicles stolen off Old Salem Road. Towards the south, a vehicle was broken into on Old Salem, a storage unit theft on Old Salem. The storage unit thing, you'll probably seen those in the last 3 or 4 reports. That storage unit gets broken into a lot. So that's just something to kind of be mindful of if you're looking for a place to store property. Maybe I don't think they have the best video surveillance. We never really come up with leads from there. The shoplifting case at Love's, and then off Concert, we had a graffiti case. Most of these we don't have any leads on. We did make the shoplifting arrest, but these are good at what they do for a reason, and lack of video cameras or witnesses don't give us a whole lot to go on, really, until we recover a vehicle and we can try to get DNA from that. But it takes time. Any questions about anything in the report from September?
I had a quick one. I saw in your report a couple mental health calls, and how do you respond to those? And it looked like maybe same address a couple times, or at least same general area.
Yeah, it just depends on what the call, you have a mental health call, but it depends kind of what the mental health is surrounding, if that makes sense. Like it could be what we would call like a drug-induced mental health call, or it could be like a mental health of a teenager. So it kind of depends on the type.
Okay.
we have a bunch of different partners and resources we can use. And a lot of phone calls get made on those. And we do our very best not to, well, it honestly depends. It's hard. It's a hard question to answer. It really is. But we work with mental health pretty close, and a lot of partners, and family becomes a big one in that one, trying to, if we can, take them out of the environment that might be causing that issue. And then a lot of referrals to like DHS or whatnot, trying to reach out to even physicians to, if they're on meds, those meds aren't working, we can reach out to senior services or DHS, mental health, and then they can get in touch with physicians by looking up records and inputting suggestions.
Okay.
From mental health calls, our hands are tied in a way if it's just mental health and we're just kind of there to calm things down. We're not really making any enforcement. We can't take them to jail for anything if they're not committing crimes, you know?
Yeah, I just thought that a few of them, and I was just wondering, like, you follow up with mental health at the county,
Yeah.
and it sounds like that's a direction that you go in to
Yes.
try to resolve or figure out what's going on.
Yeah, so she used to work with the county. She's now moved full-time with Albany Police Department. We have a mental health caseworker that will come out to calls with us.
All right.
So if we get a bad call and we can just tell by the info we're getting from dispatch, we'll call her and we'll just say, hey, we need you to come out with us. And she'll come out on a whim and be there within minutes. And she's really good at negotiating with people that are in a crisis, not thinking clearly. And then we just kind of back off from that point and kind of turn it over to them. December will be my 11th year in law enforcement. Mental health has skyrocketed even since then. I mean, we wouldn't go to a lot of mental health calls in 2010, 11, and now it's daily. Yeah. A lot of drug-induced stuff. So it would be classified as mental health, but a lot of times it's people so highly intoxicated or under the influence that they're seeing things that aren't real. But a lot of that is drug-induced.
Okay. Yeah, that's sad. But, yeah.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Tough spot.
Any council, other members, questions? All right.
That's it.
Yeah, you got off easy.
You guys are the easiest.
Yeah.
Never any questions.
Yeah, appreciate, probably, I know that I see some citations, so I appreciate the citations. I know we get some of the traffic complaints we get, so at least you're balancing it with citations in the morning, so. thank you.
Sure. I think you'd see a lot of the citations come from Old Salem. With our briefings we work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So when we have a team change, we're always briefing like, hey, we have 2 stolen cars in Old Salem. Guys will do more traffic on Old Salem, trying to target that. That's the pattern. So, but I think Old Salem is always kind of a spot for us for speeding violation.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question, just because I'd like to follow up with, you were saying that mental health and most are drug induced. So with the current Oregon law, just with, I won't say decriminalizing because it's not, but what are your procedures for the drugs? Do we issue citations and then the court gives them the option on what way to go, the fine or the
Yes.
I'm just curious what the.
Yeah, so it's a violation, so they would be issued a citation, and then from there, it's really out of the sheriff's office hands, it goes to the district attorney's office, and then from there, those options are given for treatment or a fine.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think if you were to do research online, you would see a lot of alarming numbers about who's actually receiving treatment or the amount of fines that are actually being paid. Law enforcement's in a tough spot with that.
What I would just add, I'm on the Lynn County on the Public Safety Commission. So the I just want to blank his name.
Doug Martini?
Doug Martini talked about this a couple of months ago. In fact, I talked with him, and he can come out and give us a briefing if you'd like, to council. But one of the things with the change, with major changes and stuff, it's taken a lot of bite that they used to have in requiring people to go into treatment, and it's not there. That's not there anymore. And so they're seeing a lot more deaths and stuff, and they just don't have that ability because there's no threat of jail time anymore. You used to at least be able to say, go to treatment. And what they've seen is the treatment numbers have dropped way off. They're not, the intent was to get people voluntarily going into treatment. And now they have lost, according to him, the DA's office lost that ability to require them to go to treatment. So.
Chief, can you add any more to that? What you guys see as well?
We see the same thing that.
You're up next anyways.
I don't have any numbers for you as far as the number of mental health calls that we respond to. Generally, when we, but I will say anecdotally, just over my career, I mean, there's been a dramatic increase. I think we all see that as we drive around our neighborhoods and see people out there struggling. And Councillor Higham, to your point, actually you have 2 seats over somebody that in their other job deals with this issue day in and day out and seeing people in front of him. I know from the Albany Fire Department's perspective, we have a community paramedic who we're able to have go out and assist people, but they're really not equipped to deal with people in a mental health crisis. I mean, that's a specialty. I can say with the city of Albany, though, we are all departments are putting money towards a new mental health position that will be able, this individual, I think actually maybe worked for Lynn County Mental Health, they'll be able to go and respond to these folks in the field and try to allow the police to back off, allow us to back off, and actually try to get the help that they need. But I think we all know internally, at least I primarily know Albany, that one person isn't enough to tackle this topic. But it is at least a step in the right direction. But yeah, no, it's we're experiencing and seeing the same things you are.
Thank you both.
Yeah. I'm a little curious about when you do encounter something that's induced from some type of drug. Has that gotten worse with, do you see like marijuana store every block, it seems like sometimes, with like edibles, people eating too much of something they bought illegally and then ate too much of it and then they're having mental episodes. You see that quite often?
Yeah, I've seen more overdoses with marijuana and CBD stuff. Yeah, it's pretty wild actually. I think there was like recently one in Millersburg, I feel like the juvenile overdosed on marijuana.
From eating that edible stuff?
I couldn't tell you. I just know it was related to CBD somehow, but there's so many, the potency of it can come in so many different forms.
Right.
And different, I mean, some of them look like gummy worms and gummy bears that you would, I took the kids to Pumpkin Patch this weekend. There was like a small Ziploc bag of gummy bears. Marijuana is everywhere. Right. Yeah, it's everywhere.
We see those calls occasionally, and from reviewing the reports, frequently it is a juvenile, and maybe their parents find out or they're acting weird in front of their parents, and they call us to come do an assessment. Usually that doesn't lead, though, to us transporting somebody to the hospital. Really, I think what is the main item or the main drug that we're dealing with is fentanyl, and just the prevalency of it out there, and then the dire consequences that it has when someone takes it. That we see a fair amount of.
Yeah, I personally, about 3 weeks ago, I personally Narcan somebody who overdosed on fentanyl. We carry multiple dosages of Narcan on our body for us also, but we Narcan people. I mean, they're causing a disturbance, but by the time we get there, they're unresponsive and not breathing, and we find blue pills scattered on the ground. We know what it is. reverses effect super fast. Usually they come up fighting. Yeah, it's kind of like the Wild West in some parts of town. Albany, Levin, Sweet Home. Yeah, the stuff is out there like crazy. OSP, they do a lot of drug trafficking enforcement on the interstates and stuff. They recover thousands of these bills from people. Yeah, and it's 100%. There's houses in Millersburg right now, I guarantee you, there's fentanyl. Yeah, Albany. Yeah, it's super dangerous stuff.
I can, for the next meeting, I did this for one of our rural fire boards. I can look back at some of our charts and give you kind of a feel of the overdoses that occur in Millersburg and maybe what they overdosed on, whether it was accidental, fentanyl, and it just could be good information for you to have. That would be easy enough to do. And with the violent wake up, we're fortunate enough that we're able to start IVs on patients and we titrate the Narcan to where we slowly wake them up, where, you know, if it's given intranasally, it's not a metered dose. They just get it all. And some people can wake up violent and want to fight.
And overdoses, law enforcement will go there and kind of secure the scene, but then it's like, hey, take it to the hospital now.
Good luck.
Yeah. Unless they've done something.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So just to follow up on that, so working in Salem, I see it all the time downtown, and the state police spend quite a bit of time not necessarily arresting people because they've done nothing wrong other than, I mean, you know, they're high, but they spend a lot of time watching that individual just to make sure that they're safe. Do you guys spend, I mean, I see all the stops in mental health, but do you have any estimate on how much time you guys spend? And maybe it's not as bad. I mean, I guess it might be more prevalent up towards Loves, but otherwise I don't think it's as bad, obviously, than in a more downtown area.
So do you mean like
Just keeping your eye on people, make sure they're safe, like when you know they're gone.
Sure. Yeah. So we have procedures for that. And so if we were to take custody of somebody or Narcan somebody, we have to observe them for a certain period of time. And then that can go down a few different rabbit holes, how Narcan was given or the drug they were on. If it's IV related, it's a certain amount of hours we have to observe them under a physician in the hospital. So after I Narcan that person, I took them to the hospital for observation. I had to stay there for 6 hours before I could take him to the jail. And once you're at the jail, we have to observe them for more hours because if your intoxication level is up here, Narcan will meet it, but it will, and reverse effects, but Narcan can often dissipate faster than the drug. So the Narcan will dissipate and then they'll actually get high again because it's still in their system. So we have to babysit them for a long time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely a demand. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
different world with the fentanyl and now the marijuana as well in our
Yeah,
community.
just staffing in general, law enforcement, it's hard. Staffing's in a tough spot. Mental health's in a tough spot. The ERs are in a tough spot. And then when you have a shoplifting case with a guy that's overdosing, that's a 10-hour deal for a deputy. You know, if we have 5 deputies on the road, now you're down to 4. And if we deal with another call like that, you're down to 3. You know, so it takes a lot of time.
Thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate you coming out. Stay safe.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, turn it over
All
to
right,
you, Chief
good
Wood.
evening, Mayor, council, staff, and Sheena. Does everybody have our quarterly report in front of you, or do I need to hand a copy out? Okay, good. All right, so typical to other reports, I'll just kind of run through some of the data and then share some of the activities that have happened in our department as well as happened specific to Station 15. So far this fiscal year, we've ran on 66 calls within the Millersburg city limits. And then you can see then also in the table next to it, you can kind of get a feel for what the overall call volume is for the city of Albany. This past fiscal year, our department had a record number of calls, and we're on pace to do another record number of calls again for this year. Your response times actually are down a little bit, 7:23, which is good news. And for some of the council who maybe are newer, just as a reminder, I probably haven't said this in a couple years, but, and Mayor Cowan, you may correct me on the exact numbers on this, but when you all went and had a study done to look at response times when you were contracting with the city or with Jefferson Fire District, I want to say response times were like 12 or 14 minutes. So the decision you made back then is, you can see the fruits of that decision, that your response times are basically about in half of what they were.
I would add that the
Please.
average number of people on that initial response is 3 versus 1 also, so.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. So I just wanted to, normally this time of the year, I would say we're at the end of fire season and kind of give you a review of what's happened, but really we're not at the end of fire season yet. We are still currently under, we're not allowing backyard burning, and so that would include folks that live in the city of Millersburg. We will open up backyard burning, which normally starts October 1st. We'll open it up once we get some appreciable rain. Up to this point, ODF is staying in fire season, and actually they increased their risk levels for this week. And they asked us as Lynn County Fire Chiefs if we would continue with keeping the closure in place. And they're the ones with the meteorologists that are measuring moisture content of fuels. They're the experts. We're going to go with them until the weather changes a little bit. And then, sadly, up in Washington, just on the other side of the river, there's a wildland fire going outside of Camas. And then yesterday, we had quite a bit of smoke from the Cedar Creek fire down outside of Oak Ridge. So fire is still on the landscape. We're still not out of the woods yet, but thankfully the days are shortening and we get dew in the morning, so it's helping. But before we just let people go out and start torching off piles, we want to make sure that some fuels are wet. But we responded on 6 different fires as your Albany Fire Department. We went to Northern California, the McKinney fire, and then you can see for yourself the other fires that we've been out on. The picture that is right next to the list of conflagrations that we responded on was a unique opportunity that we had because of our relationship with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office. When we had the east wind event, really low humidities, fire risk was really high, the State Fire Marshal's Office had released a task force from the Double Creek fire over in eastern Oregon, and they called me and said, hey, any chance you would be willing to host a task force, just 5 engines, and keep them in your area so they could either respond to calls in our area or they could be deployed to another fire in the state somewhere. Well, of course, it's like we'll take 5 staffed fire trucks to hang out in our area. And we have this beautiful new station that the community of Millersburg built that has ample space for fire trucks to park. And so we converted the meeting room into a dorm, and we had probably about 18 people, 5 pieces of equipment, park and spend the day with us and overnight. And they were able to do some laundry. They were able to shower because they had been deployed on a fire, so they were dirty and looking to get clean. And then as the risk in the valley subsided, they deployed to the Cedar Creek fire in Oak Ridge. So really a unique opportunity that I think benefited all of us having extra staff on hand. We upstaffed ourselves, just so you know, that when we see, as a department, when we see the risk increase, we try to bring more staff on so we have more vehicles available to respond. see here. So then on the other side, other sheet of the paper, City of Millersburg Community Paramedic referrals. For those newer on the board, that's a position that we have that their job is to try to keep people out of the back of the ambulance and out of the back and out of the emergency room. That's a referral-based system. So when our crews start going out on somebody that they see that is, maybe unable to care for themselves or medicate themselves, Hillary Kosmicki is our community paramedic. She goes out and engages with the patient as well as with the family to try to solve whatever that problem is, so we don't keep responding out. I don't have numbers for August and September. She has been out of the office, but by the next quarterly report, we'll have some more data. But as you can see, that ebbs and flows based on the demand and where some people in your community are with their given health status. Fire and life safety evaluations, those are us going out into businesses and looking at them, making sure they're safe for the public to enter. And for those of you who are on the council, primarily it's the fire extinguishers up to date, exits aren't blocked, general public safety items. And then some of the pictures, just to brag a little bit about the department, and then I'll tell you some of the challenges and what's on the horizon for us. I had a wonderful September 11th ceremony since the last time we were here at the county courthouse. Kate Brown attended and spoke, which was good having her there. It was the first time that the governors attended. We also, the next picture, there was Antiques in the Streets and the car show, which actually conflicts with the car show here in Millersburg. So there's two car shows going on in this area. Well, the cool part about this current, or the one that happened in Albany, our nonprofit, Albany Firefighters Community Assistance Fund, was chosen to receive the revenue generated by the car show. And what we had to do is provide the volunteers to make to do the setup and the breakdown. Well, our nonprofit made $8,300 in one day. And for a one-time fundraiser, just get in, set up in the morning, have a few people there during the day, people take things down afterwards, $8,300, like a killer. Awesome fundraiser. So I'm looking to both of you, since you're newer faces on the council. We have the Albany Firefighters Community Assistance Fund. We use those dollars that if somebody in Millersburg, they have a house fire and they need a hotel to stay in until their insurance kicks in. We use that money for that. We purchase car seats for people to come down who can't afford car seats. We can install car seats. Smoke detectors, life jackets, basically anything that you see as a fire department that we're providing to your community for free, we use AFCAF dollars to be able to make those purchases. And then the other thing that is really special that we do is on each one of our pieces of apparatus, there is at least $50 cash in an envelope, where our people, if they see a need, and they think that money could be used to help that need, they're able to access it. No questions asked. They just write down one sentence of how they spent it, and then we replenish the money. And it's really a special program that's made a lot of difference, like prescription drugs, just simple things that people see, that our people see, they're able to do. So our treasure hunt was back post COVID, took a little bit of time off, and we opened up 2 of our fire stations. And our treasure hunt is our open house. We just try to give it kind of a clever name. And we opened up Station 11, so our downtown station, as well as Station 15. And then included in that is the Albany Police Department and Tangent Fire Department. So all told, we probably had about 300 children that attended, and we're estimating probably 600 adults. So really well attended. You had out here at Station 15 a steady flow of people go through the station. Now, not all of them are people from the city of Millersburg. There were some city of Albany people in there, but there were also Millersburg folks that came through, and likewise Millersburg folks, we want them to see our other station as well. We include Tangent because we do fire truck rides out there, and that is a really nice area to put kids in the fire truck and drive them around the block because there's just really no traffic. So kind of one of the challenges we're facing right now that I just wanted to get on your plate so you know is our ambulance service our paramedics are just kind of working really hard. And what some of the issues that we're facing right now, and this isn't only true with the Albany Fire Department, but it's true across the state, is we're facing wall times, which is a new phenomenon over my career, where we'll transport somebody to the hospital and our ambulance, the patient will stay on the stretcher for 45 minutes before they'll be able to get an emergency room bed. That is happening more and more frequently. We are taking transfers and have been started during COVID. We thought it was a COVID-related anomaly, but it's just turned out now to become the norm, where we're taking transfers to all sorts of different facilities, where we'll take somebody to the hospital, and then the next thing you know, the nearest available hospital bed is in maybe Klamath Falls or Reedsport, Boise. And what I did was I took just a little screenshot, and I apologize how small it is, but I think it's a really good illustration of when I put this report together, would have been on Friday or Thursday. This is a snapshot of the Oregon Health Authority bed availability status. And we're in Region 2, so that's why when I took the screenshot, I left the icon on Region 2, which is Lynn County, Marion County, and I think it goes over to the coast, like Polk. And out of the 700 staffed non-ICU beds, there were only 16 beds available in our area. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of a flavor of the capacity that our hospitals are running at. So anyway, there's that. I'm going to move a little bit faster because this is the longest report I've given in my entire time coming to the Millersburg City Council. We're hiring people right now. We have 4 people that are going to onboard on Monday. We have 1 individual in the queue. We unfortunately have lost some people over the last few months and probably will lose a few more. With the way the labor market is, and maybe it's like this in your professions as well, it's tight out there. And to be honest with you, you can go up to the metro area and make more money and work fewer hours and honestly do less work right now than working in mid-sized departments like Albany or Corvallis, or heck, even Salem Fire Department is losing people. Eugene Springfield is losing people. The metro area is just, they're gobbling people up, and we're feeling that. So we've kind of shifted our hiring, and you see it in this group that we're onboarding, kind of focusing more on local people. We're not lowering our qualifications, but if we see that you have ties to our community, we're going to just work with you more and try to get you, try to move you along and give you a second consideration. You know, a lot of the folks we lose live up in the Portland area, and so it's closer to home for them and for all the other reasons I mentioned. So out of the 4, 1 person, or out of the 5 total, 1 person lives in Jefferson, 1 lives in South Salem, and 3 are South Albany High School graduates. So we're really focusing in on our local talent. And then lastly, I'll say, I'm super, super excited to say this. We have an administrative assistant, Rachel Bodemiller, who is new to the fire service as of about 4 years ago. So she's had to learn all the jargon, a whole new language, and she is also the individual who applies for grants for our department. And she has struck out, but she just has kept going, kept learning. And in a matter of 2 weeks' time here this month, she's brought in $680,000 or $634,000 towards us purchasing a new fire truck. And then a week later, we found out that we received the Staffing for Adequate Firefighters grant to hire 3 firefighters that the federal government will pay 100% for 3 years. So it's a $1.2 million grant. We found out that we received both those grants in a matter of 2 weeks. So bravo to her, and she's truly a testament to perseverance pays off. And so with that, that was a long report. Thank you for staying awake. Any questions?
I have 2 questions. I know you
Please.
guys are gonna hate me for this, but they're actually pretty quick. One, do you have numbers? So my concern here in Millersburg, because honestly, the community is a lot of older individuals. So I'm curious, what is the response time if you have the numbers on ambulance response times instead of fires?
Okay.
So just kind of curious. That's something that's been brought up to me a few times by older people that are more worried about that response time.
Sure. So, okay, let me answer that question. So when we measure response times, we measure it from the time that somebody calls 911 and the dispatcher picks it up to the time that we have a unit on scene, whether it's a fire truck or an ambulance. And for Millersburg, because you have your own station, regardless of the type of call, you're getting that engine responding. So if it's somebody who just
it'd be
needs
hard to
help
break it out.
lift it up, you're getting that engine. If it's a structure fire, you're getting that engine. So that also, for your constituents who asked that question, all of our fire trucks are advanced life support. So on the fire truck at Station 15 is at least one paramedic with, honestly, the bulk of the equipment that's carried on an ambulance minus the stretcher. So our goal is that when we get on scene, it doesn't matter whether it's a fire truck or an ambulance, that individual is getting advanced life support care. Heck, our engines are doing 12 lead EKGs. Again, short of the stretcher and a few of the narcotics, those individuals are getting that care. Out of that 723, if you think about it mathematically, 66 calls, probably 87% of those are EMS related. So your response time is going to be right in that area. If anything, response times on fires are a little bit longer because our crews have to put on their gear before they respond. So something that we call our turnout time, how long it takes us to respond to the tones and get on the road, is a little longer on fire calls.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, next question.
And then the other one was, is there a way, and I don't know, maybe this is for the city as well, because honestly, so when you were talking the backyard burning, are you talking about like fire pits and stuff as well, all burning?
No.
Okay, because I was gonna say, if you are, that's what I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and I don't see it ever posted anywhere that you can't burn.
So fire pits are a unique item that it's questionable whether or not as fire chief I have the authority to say you can't have a fire pit in your backyard. There are certain times of the year, however, though, and it happened over that period where we had those fire trucks at Station 15, where we dead ask everybody that we respond to not even do those fire pits. So right now, this restriction that we're talking about is exclusively for people with leads and branches in the backyard.
Okay, but it still might be a good thing to put maybe on the marquee or something, because like I said, I didn't know you couldn't right now. And I don't think neighbors even know it. So.
Well, what we do have on the website is for backyard burning.
So it's
Here,
okay.
the number number is on there to call. So, and the backyard burning showing that it's advanced. If they call the number, which they're supposed to do to check, because even when you're in burn season, it has to be a burn day. So DEQ handles that, so the fire doesn't. So, but they have to call that number to make sure it's a valid day, even though once October 1st hits, because of atmospheric conditions, it may not be a day that they're allowed to burn. So they're supposed to be calling that number.
541-451-1904.
And I would,
That might just be behind. There you have it.
yeah. And I would just add to what Chief Wooten was saying, is one of the things, with that engine company being a paramedic often, especially if it's a trauma or something, the time that the medic unit's going to be on scene is pretty short, because they're usually have them buttoned up, and especially if it's a critical patient, they're buttoned up, ready to go. They come in, they pass the patient off to them, and they're loading them and they're going.
Well, and that seems to be the part, at least the few people that have talked to me, I don't think they're aware that there is a medic on the engine. So they just look at, there's no ambulance.
And not even, well, and, yeah.
So it's more maybe just them learning that, no, it's available. It's just not what you're used to seeing, saying
It's
ambulance.
everything but, just about everything but a stretcher. Right. Yep. And then if there aren't any other questions, I have have a little gift for the mayor, if I may. So when we decommissioned the temporary station, City Manager Kreitman and I, when we took down the flag, we looked at each other and said, what should we do with this flag? Because it has some meaning. And we thought probably for about 10 seconds, and we're like, this would be something good for Scott County. So if I may approach, this flag flown over temporary Station 15 on its last day is presented to Mayor Scott Cowan in honor of his dedication to the safety of the Millersburg community.
Behind it.
She got it all packaged up
Wow,
today.
that's
We were
awesome.
waiting for you to leave the office.
Thank you, guys. It really means a lot.
That is neat.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief.
I can tell you folks, and I know Kevin is around, but I got the history here, that I think that this fire station would not be built if it weren't for the persistence of Scott Callen as the mayor. And then Scott was good enough to know, let's hire some good people who can help us do that. And that's when he hired Kevin as a consultant here to get this process started. But again, it would not have been up and running or even started but for his persistence. And it's probably started 15, 18,
2007.
yeah.
Well, it started before that, but
Yeah,
for
but-
my
yeah.
early involvement, it was 2007.
So,
98 is when it first started.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
conversation started then.
yeah, and then Scott kept saying, we gotta do something about this. And Mayor, we gotta do something. Let's look on this. And Scott took the bull by the horns out here and got
And
things moving along, and then got Kevin on it.
the call times are much better.
Oh, yeah.
I found a guy on Concert Road, face down, his dog got wrapped up in his pedals and he was passed out. And right at that hill. And so I pulled my pickup sideways and called 911. It went through Marion County and back
Oh,
to
yeah.
Jefferson. And it took him 15 to 20 minutes to get there. And the guy was not in good shape.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is
Yeah.
appreciated.
Thanks, Forrest, for
Well,
the kind
certainly.
words.
Thank you
And
for that.
thank you, Chief, and appreciate that. And yeah, it means a lot. Thank you. That's good. So definitely improvement to our community and our safety, and a beautiful station that our community had purchased. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, well, okay. Moving on, we have another guest speaker, Ryan Vaught, Director of COG, and you're here to tell us a little bit about more education of the COG, and I know it's in our packet as well.
Yes.
So,
Thank you, Mayor and councilors, city staff. I'm Ryan Bowden. I'm the director for the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments. And I'm finally able to see people face to face since I was hired 2 years ago. So it is an absolute thrill to be here today and say hi and with a handful of faces I've certainly seen on the see you all. I just wanted to come and introduce myself and talk a talk a little bit about the Council of Governments in case you weren't familiar with it. I provided in your packet the first ever annual report that we did to try and summarize a little bit about our footprint in the Lynn, Benton, Lincoln region. Now, I'm going to apologize on two accounts. One is, this was a 2021 report, and here we are in October, so it feels a little stale. It's taken a little while for us to be able to do face-to-face work, and it's taken a little while for me to be able to get here, but the context in terms of the delivery of the services is still the same. And then the second apology is, since this was the very first time we put our minds to doing this, it is a bit lackluster in being able to take a look at it and say, okay, well, we're Millersburg, so what does that mean for us? Because the data is only for them. I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in Millersburg, but the plan is that this coming year we'll be able to provide an addendum report for all of our member agencies that give you a better perspective of really what our work looks like specifically in your city. And so be on the lookout for that, but hopefully even taking a look at it, you thought, well, this is interesting. Here's a voluntary body of work that really covers a whole lot of different things in the community. So my elevator speech, in terms of people asking me what it is that I do, is quite problematic because we do things everywhere from the seniors and people with disabilities to the community economic development. I'm not going to belabor really anything that's in that packet. I'm just going to cover a couple of highlights. I'm certainly open for questions, and I plan to stick around until the end of the council meeting if that's okay. And so if anybody has additional follow-ups, I'm happy to chat about that. So briefly, we have approximately 200 people on our staff. The lion's share of that, 3/4 of that, is really dedicated to seniors and people with disabilities. So we serve as a AAA, an area agency on aging, which is a federal designation, which means that we get older American Act dollars to do services for older adults. And we also contract with the state to do the Senior and Disability Services Program for the region. So we do the Medicaid determination. We make sure that seniors and people with disabilities who are eligible are on food stamps. We provide in-home supports for people so that they can stay safely in their homes. We respond to allegations of abuse and neglect. We provide foster homes in the places where people need to transition out. So we have really kind of a large scale of services, and that is the lion's share of our staffing and the lion's share of our budget. The second big chunk of work that we do is community and economic development. In our community and economic development area, we serve as the economic development district for Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, and Lane counties. Lane County has joined us in that effort because they can't be an economic development district on their own. So what does that mean? It means that we have a federal designation. They give us some planning dollars every couple of years, but the federal designation allows us to more easily access economic development administration funds for large-scale projects or small-scale projects throughout the region. And so as those dollars become available, it is really nice if anybody who is seeking those dollars, whether it's through us or individually for economic development purposes, to be able to tie that investment back to the strategic planning work that we need to do. That helps kind of free up those funds a little bit easier. We also do a lot of transportation work. So we host the Area Commission on Transportation, which is an advisory body to ODOT on transportation issues, of which Councilor Sullivan and Janelle both sit on. We also host the Albany Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Corvallis Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, and they assist ODOT in prioritizing projects specifically for this area, whether it's bikeways, walkways, pathways, bridges, new roadways, safety work. And again, Councilor Sullivan and Janelle are both on that. And then not to be outdone, Janelle is an Cascades West Regional Consortium Group. And that is a group that's really hosted by a number of cities in our region to look at wetlands issues. And they've commissioned a feasibility study about what it would look like for us to have a public land bank, whether the COG hosts it or otherwise, to try and mitigate some of the frustrating, economically challenging issues associated with trying to build on wetlands, whether they're the beautiful, pristine cattails and blue herons, or whether they are just ryegrass fields that we'd like to build on. They all have the same price in terms of a brutal price for people, which is stifling economic development in our area. I'm preaching to the choir here. So, in economic development, we also run a ride line brokerage. So we do basically like a taxi service for people who are Medicaid eligible who need to get to the doctor. We pick them up and take them to the doctor, and pick them up and take them back. And that does a lot of work. We receive 300 to 400 phone calls a day for scheduling rides for people. So it's a lot of work. Things that are happening here, the Albany Area Metropolitan Planning Organization is currently working on the surface transportation block grant. And so that's wrapping up this week in terms of applications for work there. We are also doing the Lynn Benton Lincoln County Broadband Initiative to try and expand broadband throughout the region. You've heard a lot about that at the state level. And we're kind of heading up that effort. We just brought in a contractor to do the feasibility work related to that. They're going to be here in the region later on this week doing the kickoff meeting for that. We're ramping up the regional transportation plan, and that's going to go through the spring, so lots of work still going on that. And then the last body of work that we do is we are an assistant wherever necessary for certain administrative functions. So we have served as the finance department or fiscal administrator for cities when they've wanted or needed it. We have land use planners and transportation planners on staff that we have that we let out for work. A lot of cities in our region can't afford a full-time land use planner or what have you, and so we have people on staff that do that. And actually here in Millersburg, we provide quite a bit of tech support. You're one of the cities that contract with us to do tech support for you. Our incredible team helped with the transition over to Office 365. Well, it's been about a year now, hasn't it?
Yep. And SharePoint cloud-based services that we use now extensively.
Yeah, you all were early adopters when it came across. You went jumping straight out into SharePoint and got your teams going, and Laura and company were able to set up a tenant pretty quick, and so that. And we appreciate you being a little bit of the guinea pigs there, because you had kind of a crisis that you needed to do, but that helped us learn a couple of things about what it would look like to then transition our entire agency to people. So glad to hear that relationship is still thriving and going well there. So those are the main things that we do across the board. If you are familiar with councils of government, every single one of us looks very different. There's 5 of them in the state, and well, there's 6 of them if you include Metro, but we all have a completely different book of business, which is why I wanted to come and share with you a little bit about ours. Mayor Cowan is now sitting on our board since ex-mayor Lapine has moved off to Idaho to do fishing and grandkids and whatever else he's doing up there. And super appreciative of that. Had a couple of meetings so far, and that's an every other month commitment, but much like all of you, it's yet another commitment. Appreciate the work and the sacrifices to keep us going. Are there any questions? I don't have any cool gifts or anything. Frank, I don't even have your crony gift.
Well, I appreciate coming, and I look forward to, I think we all will look forward to that updated version of more sort of specific of, and when do you think that would be, that'll be like a every once a year or quarterly, or how often?
So my plan is to do a full-scale annual report that will give you a sense of what the footprint has been. I am available to come anytime you'd like, and so if you wanted me to come off-cycle, come out in 6 months or what have you, I will gather information ad hoc to be able to share that with you. Or if you have a specific program you want me to dig into, I'll come and bring that, or I'll bring somebody who's more intelligent.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any questions for Ryan? Appreciate you coming. Thank you, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. All right. Next on the agenda is our hearing, or public hearing, and so we'll move to that. And so we're going to be holding a legislative public hearing regarding urban growth boundary. The meeting will proceed as follows. Staff will make a presentation, and anyone else who wishes to address the agenda item will be given the opportunity. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each for a testimony. Council members may ask questions of the staff or anyone else who testifies. Now I call the public hearing open, and I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so just to provide a little bit of background on what's before us tonight. The industrial land in the city is sort of filling up, and as we try to make sure that we have enough, we're making some changes and wiggling some things around to make sure that we have room to grow in the industrial category. As we did look at the industrial land that was available, we saw that a lot of that property that was designated for general industrial wasn't very usable. You've heard part of this story before, but we'll go through it again. Specifically, there was 160 acres that we've recently pulled out of the city, and for a host of reasons. And this really wasn't developable because it was heavily wooded, has poor access, the topography is challenging. It's got several different overlays on it, which really prevent development at all. And so this wasn't doing a lot for our city being in a general industrial designation. So what we were proposing to do is swap some property out. We want to remove some property from the city and then add in some different property into the city that's far more viable for industrial development for a host of different reasons. So in August, you probably remember, we pulled out that 160 acres from our city limits. That's Site A that you can see up here on our slide. But at that time, we did not change the urban growth boundary. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that here as we move forward. But first, I wanted to answer a simple question. So why swap? Why not just grow the city? Why not just get more industrial zone property? Why do we have to do the swap instead? Well, the state has a lot of different rules that pertain to changing urban growth boundaries. And a swap has a lot lower bar to satisfy. And the reason why is pretty straightforward and simple to understand, because the state figures your city isn't growing. And if you're not growing, you don't need to figure out a rationale and justify the need that you have to grow your urban growth boundary. Remember, the state doesn't like urban growth boundaries growing. They want to keep them minimal to protect farming. And so the swap has a lot lower threshold requirements. They do have to be similarly sized, and in this case, they are similarly sized. They have to stay the same comprehensive plan and zoning once you swap them. That way the use is primarily the same, and we're satisfying that. We do have to perform an alternatives analysis though. And so you saw that in the staff report packets that went out to you was an analysis where we studied different possible locations where this could possibly go. So moving on to the actual project description, we're really essentially doing 2 things here at the City Council tonight. We're hoping to amend our urban growth boundary, change it around a little bit, and then we're hoping to add comprehensive plan and zoning designations to the new areas. So we're gonna walk through that in a little bit more detail right now. So this slide shows the city limits as they were in the summer, before we changed the 160 acres. This is what it looked like. The UGB was basically the same as the city limits at that time. So in August, we removed the 160 acres, but again, the urban growth boundary stayed the same. So what I did was here, I kind of over-exaggerated the urban growth boundary to make it super clear that that's what the urban growth boundary essentially looks like today. So it still encapsulates that 160 acres that we removed. Now, we did that on purpose because what that allows us to do is this. This slide shows what we're proposing today. And the urban growth boundary is shown in red here, and it would no longer include that 160 acres that we removed, but it would now include 160 acres along Concert, which is far more viable. So the newly expanded area that you see up here, Site B, I want to make sure this is clear, it would not change the city limits. That area, Site B, would not be in the city limits. It would just be inside our urban growth boundary area. Only an annexation could actually add that to the city. And so you might see an annexation coming on pretty soon too, to pull that area in. Annexations are a lot easier than urban growth boundary changes, and they're done with just us. We don't have to rely on the state or anybody else to allow those to happen. So this black dotted line you see here is the existing city limits, and we're not proposing that that change as part of this action today in any way. So this newly expanded area, even though Site B is going to be within the city, we also have to satisfy a state rule, which is that we have to add comprehensive plan designations to that property. And so we're proposing to pull that in with pre-designating comprehensive plans. That's a state requirement. Now, we don't legally have to add zoning to that property at this time, but we're proposing to do that now anyway. The reason why is because when we go to annex that, it makes it far easier because both of those designations will already be in place. So even though pre-zoning isn't a state requirement, we are allowed to do it. So we're taking advantage of that and trying to make sure that goes forward. But again, those designations won't take effect until that property is annexed. So there's one last kind of complicated thing I wanted to go through to make sure it's crystal clear in regards to our application of comprehensive plan and zoning. What you see here on the slide, we have a little bit of a no man's land that we needed some attention to during this process. And let me tell you what I'm talking about here. Just to orient you again, the area you see in green, that's the area B, that's the area we're pulling into the urban growth boundary. And just again, to orient you, what you see there on the screen is the kind of the highlight of the top half of the 160 acres that we pulled out. This purple line you see is the urban growth boundary that we're proposing to move to. That's where we want it to be. And this, again, the black line shows where the city limits are today. Now this yellow area here highlights property that is currently inside the urban growth boundary today. We're not changing that. That's always been in our urban growth boundary, but it's outside our city limits. And so in order to keep everything nice and clean, what we're proposing to do is add comprehensive plan and zoning to that yellow property as well. It's just a sliver, but that way when we do actually go to annex in the larger area, we can also annex in that sliver and just keep the boundaries nice and normal. And that's not going to have anything to do with our urban growth boundary swap because it's already inside the urban growth boundary. So it doesn't mess up our numbers at all, doesn't make the amount bigger. The state's fully aware of this. It wasn't a problem at all. So it just helps keep everything clean. As a side note, I want to be sure that it's also clear that the urban growth boundary is a shared boundary between us and the county. And so the actions that we take tonight are actually going to be tentative until the county actually adopts those changes too. So what are we proposing to do with the county? We're proposing to add comp plan and zoning to Site A, the 160 acres that we pulled out of the city. And we're making an application to them as soon as the city council takes an action tonight. So any action is going to be tentative, and we've been in constant communication with the county as well. They're our close partner on this project. They're expecting the application. We're not expecting any turmoil once it hits the county. So in order to adopt the proposed project before you tonight, the city has to assure that it meets certain criteria. I'm not going to belabor those by going through each of them in detail here in our presentation tonight. There's 3 different levels though, and that's the state level, the county level, and of course our rules, our local levels at the city level. And the staff report goes through all of those in extreme detail. So you've got all of that included there. But suffice it to say, to summarize those, we meet all of those criteria, and the staff report shows exactly how. And so before I wrap up here, I did want to mention that the DLCD did review this. They're kind of the gatekeepers on urban growth boundaries at the state level. They reviewed this and gave us a letter of support for the project. They like what we're doing. They think it's the right use in the right place. So that definitely helps us move forward. So with that, staff recommends approval. The Planning Commission reviewed this. They also recommend approval to the City Council as well. And so we have a suggested motion here on the screen. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Because we're in public hearing, we'll hear any testimony. We do have someone online. Start with any testimony in favor, or if we've received anything in writing. Matt?
Nothing in writing. You're right, the room is empty. We do have one person online. I'm not hearing anything from that participant saying that they want to speak, so silence is consent at this point.
Okay. And I'm assuming nothing negative as well as opposed? Okay. And then moving on, if we have no other conversation about that, what I got here, questions, staff, does the staff have anything to add other than what you've commented on? Okay, well, I think with that, I'll close the public meeting, and I'm supposed to gavel that. And moving on to council and deliberation of what is being put forth, the suggested motion or further conversation.
I move that the city council approve DC 22-01 and adopt ordinance 199-22.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a second. To approve all in favor, signify by aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Thank you. And got that done, and appreciate all the work that's been going on with that as well as with the planning commission. So thank you. All right, moving on to, we got public comment. We ever heard from you, Ryan? Anything else to add? Oh yeah, that's a good one.
The Halloween edition.
Is Ron Post on? Anything from Ron? Is he our only one?
Ron is the only one online, and it doesn't appear that he wants to speak. Oh, hang on, he did enter something in the chat. Nope, he says no comments.
All right. Thanks for being here, Ron. Then I'll move on to council and staff comments. And, any council comments? Look over at Mike. Anything? Nope. Okay.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Okay.
I was reviewing a map.
That's all right.
So I had spoke with Kevin and Janelle last week, just about how they currently provide their expenditures to us every single city council meeting. I don't know if all of you know, my background's 25 years doing budget at the federal and state level. I think what they provide is overkill. I know me personally, I don't necessarily want to see every single little transaction that they make in their daily operations that we've already said we give them authority to do. Instead, I would have more interest in seeing out of the approved budget that we passed for you, how have you executed it? At what point are you at? Are you, if we're 50% through the year, are you 50% spent on the budget, or are you behind, or are you ahead, or however it may be, but just to have some kind of layout of how that is going instead of just this monthly. I mean, that's a lot of pages of just very mundane purchases that I don't think my preference is not to see. I'd rather see more in-depth detail on the budget. But.
Okay. Thanks, Mike, for bringing that up. Any follow-up to that?
Have you seen the dashboard report that they show?
We kind of covered that a little bit on how their new software would be able to bring a dashboard up to show that.
Yeah, I like the dashboard for it, but yeah.
I do recall wasn't long ago, there was a member of the community that wanted to know like every pin that was bought, every chair that was bought. I don't think I'm the only one that remembers that, so.
And I would say, at least just to counter that, that's a public, that's an information request that they can easily come to the city and file and to get that if somebody wanted to see that type of data. But
Sure.
I don't know, like I said, that's just my preference. I wanted to throw it out there.
And I would also just point out that prior to the change, going from a council form of government to a council manager form of government, those were things the council had to, because you were the ones that were approving those at that point.
Sure.
So that's not there. And we're still having a little bit of hiccups with the dashboard, but that is our intent, is to show that at least quarterly or ideally monthly. Sheena and Jamie are going to training here with Cassell, and that's one of the things they have up, because our other thought is, if we can, having that available to council where you can just go in at any time. So we're hopeful that that will be some information that we get additional for that. Available. show it either monthly and or quarterly, whatever your preference would be.
So what Mike, you brought up, and what I'm hearing is changing our accounts payable that comes up monthly, and basically removing that out of our packet and information that we receive, and then going to a dashboard of monthly or quarterly. We can decide here in a sec, as basically an update on where we are standing financially in our budget, and just moving forward in that way. Does that capture sort of what I think I'm seeing with council? And then, so with that, are we good going quarterly, or do we want to do this monthly?
What are you guys capable of doing?
When it's working, and then we know the data in it is showing correctly, monthly is not. And we may be able to get, what we're hopeful is, we may be able to get to where you can have access to it at any point if you want to go in and look just to see where we are. So monthly or quarterly, it may be, if we have it where we can give you access to it to look at it any time you want, it may be just something you want to do publicly quarterly. It's really we're comfortable either way.
Sort of like the quarterly, but
I would be
that
good with
publicly, and then
quarterly.
having us access, and we can access it anytime.
I was gonna say, I would add just to get with Dave's comment. It might be something to consider. I know on the state side, we publish all of our transactions on the web. So it's out there. That might be something to consider down the road too, just depending on how many, if you get a ton of public information requests, it might be easier to do that. If you don't, then
I'm not aware of any, other than what we would get once in a while from companies outside the state that are wanting to look at more because they're selling information to companies.
Right.
This is where they're purchasing, you may want to look at.
but just to throw it out there, that could be something to look at down the road if you get.
And one of the things we talked about is, it's the dashboard, but to be honest with you, with everything else that's going on, so we just haven't had a chance to get into it. And when we brought Cassell on, that was one of the things we looked at, as being that one of the things we're finding is not everything they told us it would do, we're finding that it will do, but we're not sure that that's not, because of COVID, no one was actually able to go do the training. So hopefully when Sheena and Jamie get back, we'll have a little better feel for what we can and can't do in the dashboard.
And I think the dashboard itself, numbers have been corrected. I think those issues, there are some settings that we're wanting to get a better understanding of so we can show you that information more clearly. And when we jump between screens, it doesn't revert back to last year's data, which is what it's doing right now. So we can go through that. The information is available. It's not wrong. It's just a little cumbersome to right now to use it in the way that we use it.
Okay. All right, what I'm hearing is we'd like it to see it quarterly, publicly, and then once we get things going, we'll see if we can have access.
And I would imagine the other thing that we can do that we probably just send out a packet, I would imagine once we get them back, we should be able to just do an overall printout that would just show our main budget areas and where we are expenditures year to date. And if that's something we could just put, we may just put that in the packet as well, and have the ability to pull up if you want to break it down, you can look at the others. So.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate bringing that up. Any other council comments? Any staff comments before we move to the city manager's report? All right, move on to city manager.
Okay, we'll start with our project update. Janelle has the majority. We have some exciting news here for you.
All right. So we have a few grants that we have also found out that we've gotten, and a few that we are working on getting contracted right now, getting in place. So we were notified that we were awarded the grant for the Waverly Drive Cox Creek Bridge that we've been trying for several years. And I think I updated you a month ago or so that the bridge was being looked at again. So we did get that award for about $3.5 million. The amount that will, in ODOT's formulas, it will be escalated with construction costs over the years until it's done. So the total amount will actually be more than $3.5 million. It does require a 10.27% match from the city. They are proposing, or they offered to get some of these projects going on an accelerated schedule if they could be delivered on that schedule. Lynn County is delivering this project for us. That's been the agreement from the beginning when we applied for these grants. It used to be their bridge, and they've been more involved actually with the design. And they are a certified agency for delivering these projects, so they can deliver this for us with the federal funds that are involved. And they have committed to doing this accelerated schedule, which means accelerated in this in this context means early 2023, we'll start getting agreements in place. Design could start as early as summer of 2023 and construction as early as 2024, but that could all be pushed back a little bit too. So we're really excited about this because that bridge is in really bad shape.
We drive over and see pieces of concrete falling off. It's bad.
And we do get bridge inspection reports from ODOT every year, and I just got the one for this bridge. It actually was no different than last year's, but it's not good. So it definitely needs to be replaced. Also, a couple things I didn't have on the report in the packet, but the Old Salem Road Guardrail Project, Director Boat mentioned the STBG funds. We actually, in the previous round of STBG funds, got that project selected for some money, and we're in the process of getting the agreements in place to do that right now. So that money will come through COG, through ODOT, and COG is facilitating that to us, and then we will pay ODOT to go build this guardrail. But that's how the process has to work. And then we had COVID stimulus funds, which I believe were in the report that you saw from COG. For the Woods Road Shared Use Path, we're working on the MOU. Actually, we just got it today for those funds. So that'll help cover the design costs that we're spending right now and go forward for the next, until we end up spending them through design and acquisition of right of way for the project costs. That was all and then the STBG round that we're on right now, applications are due on Friday, and we are looking at putting in an application for additional funding for the Woods Road Shared Use Path.
And on that same vein, I'm not sure if we told the city council that we did find out that we were awarded a grant for park design and public outreach as well for our new North Millersburg Park. And so we'll be working with the consultant very shortly to work through the design on that. And of course, a lot of public involvement to make sure that we're giving the public the park they want. That's just design, conceptual design. We'll have to get construction level drawings with a different grant.
There's a lot going on with grants. So
There's a lot.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's good. All right.
Next item.
I was gonna have a question for you. So are we good on funding for the match? I'm assuming we have the funds
We
set
do.
aside for that.
We do have that. So we actually have reserves in our street fund, which will be used for this. They aren't budgeted to be spent this year, but we won't be spending them this year. So you'll see that in a future budget. The next time was Woods Road closure. If you've driven in Millersburg yesterday or today, you probably saw signs somewhere about this. So between Concert and Alexander, this week and next week is closure of Woods Road. They are providing local access, and that is intended to be for the residents who live on the road, not the people who live north of there and think they're local so they can drive through it. We really do want the route around, but that's been happening as expected. West Valley Estates is constructing half-street improvements, and when we say half-street improvements, it really means they're resurfacing the whole width. So that they're building the curb and gutter, sidewalk, or multi-use path actually on the west side. Paving is actually scheduled for next Tuesday, Wednesday. So we may be able to reopen it before the end of the week, but we want to be a little conservative on that. And notifications were given to the residents there. Detour signage is up. So far it seemed to go pretty smoothly.
It's good to see that getting done.
Before it starts
like
raining.
Yeah, it seems like it's been that way for a long time.
The project just has some challenges, but they're getting there.
Yeah.
Right, so other projects going on. We touched on Woods Road Shared Use Path. We are in preliminary design stages still. We'll be looking at wetland delineation for that area pretty soon too. Crack sealing, we're still trying to do this fall. And we have a contractor on board. I'm waiting on their scheduling, but they're hoping in the next couple of weeks, next 3-4 weeks. The Old Salem Road Waterline project is still out there. We will be working on that, but we're looking at coordinating with Plant shutdowns for the industries, probably in early summer next year for the timing. Our stormwater management plan is just about done. We've been working with David Evans on that, and that's to meet our MS4 stormwater permit requirements. So they've done a lot of work, and it's really coming along. We will have more to do to develop our stormwater program to meet the requirements of this permit. We'll be talking about that more in the future, but they've really helped us understand everything that's involved and start planning for that. And then the survey of our industrial properties should be done now. We were waiting on the farmer to smooth up fields for the final topo out there, and I expect to get that by the end of this week from our consultant who's doing the work. In the staff report, there was a section on the water DRC reports. I didn't put a slide in for that because it's just for information only. There's nothing specific, but if you have questions on it, I'm happy to answer those. Fire station project financials closeout. We did discuss bringing this to you at the end of the project. This is a very high level, big picture, diagram numbers. We do have very detailed information on expenditures throughout the project. If that's something you want to see at some point in the future, I would suggest we schedule a work session to go through that if that's something you want to do. But this is where we ended up. So the original contract amount, the change orders, and then we're about almost 5%, 5.5% change orders for the project, and then some budgeted versus expenditure amounts through the life of the project. Are there any questions on those numbers or any more detail you would like to see at some point?
Is it something just to think about, is doing a work session on that? If so, just, let's bring it up to Janelle and we'll talk about it. That's necessary.
Is that just a typo, $88 instead of 88,000?
Yeah, it's 88,000.
Looks like you came in under budget.
So
No,
are they
that
final?
looks like we came in way over budget.
Are those final, or do we still have outstanding?
Those are final for the project.
Okay.
The station itself, furnishings, some of the, is almost completely done, but there are a few little things that we'll be responsible for over time, but those are a separate budget.
The furnishing things that are remaining are not in the capital, that's in the budget.
Well, I was just curious if we could expect any more expenditure. I know contractors aren't always quick at getting their final bills in, so.
The reason you're getting this now rather than a month or two ago is
That's what you're
we
waiting.
just closed out the contract and that was the final.
And conversations went well with Wildish and the split on the pavement, the asphalt.
Well, that's what the next
That's
slide
what-
is
yeah,
about.
the next slide's-
Good segue there. Let's talk about that.
So there was a request from the sub, North Sandiam Pavement, Wildish's sub, who did the paving work, to consider an escalation for the asphalt cost because of what they dealt with at the time of construction. So this request isn't actually from Wildish, but they are passing it through from their sub. There's no markup on it. There's nothing other than what was in your packet in the italics and then the table below came straight from their sub. So that was their information they were conveying. We brought this up back in the summer, and I think it was July. The comment was, let's see how the project financials work out before we make a final decision. So we're bringing it back to you now. The contract does not have a requirement that we pay this. There were some very unforeseen changes in asphalt prices during this time frame, so that's why they are requesting it. So the question to council is, are you interested in participating in the cost of this asphalt escalation? And if so, how much? Because their request is, would you be willing to consider anything?
I would just add, there's a couple of things here just to keep in mind. One, initially the schedule was for this to have occurred last September. A year ago, September, was when they initially were scheduled to pave. They were pulled off. That was held off because of some other work that had to take place that was taking place that the site wouldn't be prepared for it. As Janelle and I have talked, as Janelle has shared, we were probably better off, from a construction standpoint with that not having occurred. then, and waiting until May. Some benefits, as far as the strength and potential damage that could have occurred and things during construction. So not having all the construction traffic on it was probably a benefit to the city. North San Am paving was the contractor on it. We know what's happened. Both North San Am did a fantastic job on the paving for us, and Wildish has done a fantastic job. It's really, it is something that's unfortunate, with what we have seen. If you want to consider something, one of the things they can probably make a difference in the future on companies looking if they're wanting to bid on projects, knowing how we treat them, if you do decide to do something, that I think could definitely be something that they would take into consideration if they're looking at projects here in the future, knowing how they were treated or how they weren't. Not that necessarily, it's business deal also, but so I don't think we have a recommendation. We just said we would bring it back to council for your consideration.
So Janelle, the increase of 38,148.57, that's straight from San Am paving to Wildish to us, no markup.
No markup.
That's not even Wildish saying we'll split it 50-50 with the city. That's just the straight pass through.
That's a straight pass-through.
Okay.
They were asking the question. So the table that, we didn't put it on the slide here because it's a little hard to read, but the table that was in the staff report is the raw information from the asphalt supplier. So it's not even North San Am, like this doesn't have to do with labor or anything. This is what they paid for the mix.
All right, and it's North San Am.
Yes, I think I just put San Am, but it's actually North.
North
Okay.
San Am paving.
All right.
Hired by
So,
Wildish, right?
Yeah, they're Wildish said.
so yeah, would, any ideas, any discussion on, do we try to split it with them, or do we cost doing business? I do lean a little bit about getting the right people in here and getting good bids. It's been a tough, it's been a struggle for us in the past. Could lean towards us getting, some service in the future if we did provide something back to them. Thoughts?
I'd be surprised if Wildish doesn't have some of the money set aside for stuff like this, maybe not all that, you know what I'm saying? They know how long a project takes. I could see half, and that being a real good show of faith of the city, and hey, we understand, but I would guess that Wildish has some of this built in there.
They have contingencies like we do,
Sure.
when everybody has a contingency built in. The way the information was presented was, Wildish locks in their bids at the time of bidding too.
Sure.
So I don't think that Wildish is obligated to pay them either.
Sure.
But yeah, that everybody has contingencies. They felt, and with the information they provided, and we know things could change, but what took place in the market was beyond what anybody would anticipate in their.
Sure.
I agree with Dave, half is 19,074 to 80. So I think that shows good faith that we treat them with respect and
All right, I'm liking that.
And I would say I'm one to always push the contract on what was awarded. It's always drove me nuts, whether it's been federal, state, whatever, where we overrun and we end up paying more on a contract than bid. However, those times are always the contractor not necessarily bidding correctly. In this case, nobody projected the cost of gas. I think at this time oil went up to $100 a barrel. Yeah, and not just oil. It's everything. So, in this is one of the rare cases where I think I would support it.
How you feel about that, Mark? You good?
Oh, I move the city pay 50% of the increase.
Sounds like a motion.
a second.
All right, we got a motion. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 50%.
We will pass that on.
Nice work. Yeah, so, yeah, anything else?
Yes. I have a couple of items. One to let you know, Lynn County is doing a natural hazard mitigation plan update. So as a part of their overall emergency plan. Previously, so the county did an update, I'm not sure if it was their first or I think it was an update in 2017. Prior to my being here, the city did not participate in that. So they asked us if we wanted to participate in it with this time, and I quickly told them yes. So one of the things, just to be aware, so when being a part of, so we're currently under Lynn County's emergency operations plan. So we're working on a COOP plan for the city, but continuity of operations plan that ties into the cities in the Lynn counties. And then we also potentially in a major emergency, because we have such close relationships with the city of Albany, work with them on things as well. But under the Stafford Act, if we don't have an adopted natural hazard emergency plan, which we would have by tying in with the counties, in the event of a major emergency, we're not eligible for the same percentage-wise of federal funding. Federal government wants to know that you have a natural hazard mitigation plan in place if they're going to pay out funding. So we've had somewhat of an exposure the last 5 years. So when it came out, we said, yes, we want to. So initially they thought that there would be some participation by the cities for that, but they've received a grant now. So there's not going to be, I don't believe it'll be very minimal of any cost to us working with the county. And I think it's under a grant through DLCD. So we have just received stuff for an IGA for that. We will probably, I'll be bringing that back. I'll let Forrest review it. We'll probably bring it back to you at the next council meeting to sign on to be a participant with the natural hazards mitigation plan, unless for some reason you say absolutely not, you don't want to participate. But that would not be my recommendation.
In hindsight, we just had an earthquake just recently. Maybe we should kind of be part of that so we can get the same percentage.
I was surprised when I looked and saw that Millersburg was the only community that didn't participate in that with the county that was not, that did not have their own plan. So I was glad that we got to this point at least, and hopefully we'll be, if nothing else, it will help us if something should happen that we are actually developing that. So just wanted to make you aware of that. The other thing is Ryan mentioned Janelle is on the consortium. The mayor previously was the alternate to the consortium. We do not have an alternate right now, and want to see if there's a counselor who is interested. If you have a real desire to do that. If not, that is something that staff could handle as an alternate position. I don't think it's a requirement that it has to be a counselor on there. But if there is a counselor that wants to be an alternate to that, you're more than welcome. But if not, something that probably myself or Matt would fill in on an alternate.
Matt looks pretty eager.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does.
Sign me up. I'm there.
I guess on that, first of the year, we've talked in the past, trying to look at different committees. Maybe we revisit that and see how things disperse.
Yeah, and the
different
consortium.
committees and our involvement as council members. On those different groups.
And to be honest with you, the mayor was something, the mayor was doing before, but
What else?
consortium, I would say, really probably makes more sense to have staff involvement because of what they're dealing with, government issues and stuff. Sure. Something that's not easy for a counselor to keep up to speed. So. Okay, so we will handle that then, and with that. I think that was the only other things that we have on that.
Is that all you have?
Yes.
All right. Okay, moving on to then Cash, got anything? for
I
us?
do.
All right.
Unusual time, but I do. What we need to do is, I need some idea from council as to what rate you want to lease this back 20 acres to, on a farm lease to Paul Cooney, and it'll just be annually. And this is just for this next year. Normally in the past, we've gone out on 1-year extensions, and we're going to continue this 1-year extension. But, so let me bring you up to date on things. You'll recall that this 142 acres out front, what we've done is consolidated all of those in one lease. And let me give you some history back. Probably, Paul Cooney's probably been leasing this property for, I'd say, 12, 14 years, something around there. Prior to that, the land that was leased out there, I think it was at about $120 an acre, or maybe even less than that. It was probably even less than that. It was maybe $90 an acre. It was pretty minimal. And then we went out to bid. Paul Cooney came in and said he will lease his land at $265 an acre, and he's continued to do that. And so it's at 142 acres, it's 20 acres, as well as the land across the area, across the railroad tracks there. We are now, he's no longer leasing 142 as of October 1st now. He will now lease the 38 acres that is not being, he was leasing the entire 63 acres at a lease rate that was, he had in place at the time that property came to the city of Millersburg. Now, part of that acreage is now taken out, 35 acres, or I think it's 35 acres. 30 acres has been taken out of that. So there's now still 38 acres that he is going to lease over there, which is west of the railroad tracks. I've told him, he's not qualmed with that we will lease that back as long as you folks can agree with that. At the rate that he was leasing it at, it was $272 an acre. He's okay with that. That is irrigated land though. This land back here, this 20 acres is non-irrigated land, and he was leasing that at the rate of $240 an acre. A while ago, it was much less than that, but about 4 or 5 years ago, we consolidated everything into one big lease package. He brought in and paid for all the irrigation system that he put on his 142 acres at his expense. He did that, but he was, we said, go ahead, you have our blessing, but it's still going to be $265 an acre. You know what to do. Now, though, the only thing we have to bring to you folks that I need direction from is what to lease this 20 acres in the back for to him. It's non-irrigated land. He had been leasing it at the rate of $240 an acre, but that rate had gone up because it says it's going to be all combined with this land out here. Yeah, it's held up on there. It's still a little bit less because it's non-irrigated. He's now come back. I had a discussion with you folks tonight. You wanted to know what he thought was a fair price. His response came back to me was at $150 an acre. So, and keep in mind, it's just 20 acres. So I just need to find out what you folks would like me to say. Here's what my council wants for that.
How many acres do we know he's farming in the general area? Because he comes out of Lafayette.
Yes, he does come out of Lafayette. I don't know what other acreage he's farming around here, other than that 162 acres that he has on the other side there. I don't know if there's other acreage south of the Santiam or north of the Santiam, but yeah, you are right. That's Lafayette.
It's just grass seed that he's raised over here.
Yeah, because it's non-irrigated.
And he has been, I can just say, in my opinion, and Janelle and Kevin work with him as well, he's been pretty receptive to any requests that we've made of him. If there's been dirt out there, I mean, he's been good to work with.
Yeah.
He's
He's got a good reputation.
Yeah, he's been good, I think. So I just don't know what to go back on him. And I'll just say, Paul, this is gonna be it. And so he's probably gonna have to take whatever we tell him, because I think he may have already planted, perhaps, or he's coming close to the planting right now.
It looks like it's perennial, so he doesn't mind.
I don't think he's.
Okay.
Mhm.
But he has been cooperative with us on helping us maintain for this next year, this 142 acres out in front here. There's an agreement worked out with him on that. So he's been a good neighbor.
And I will just add that since he had the garlic there and since we have him not farming, we did talk with them and we were contracting with him just to put a grass crop So there'll
Okay,
be
cover
seating,
crop.
just a cover crop on there to allow us, we're looking at something that if, we don't have anything happening on it, that someone can come in and cut it for hay, at least. But something we have it so we don't have that bare ground out there through the winter.
And I guess it's kind of a business decision as well for us, similar to kind of like what we did with the asphalt increase. He's gonna be a large neighbor of ours. Is it business-wise, certainly the last thing we wanna do is we don't wanna waste city money, but we want to use our resources as possible. So he's asking for, we were at $240 an acre, he's asking for $150 an acre, $90 an acre, 20. So he's asking for a decrease of what would be $1,800 annually, is my quick math.
We just spent 13,000 to clean beautification, strips of weeds, dirt. I think I dropped $1,800.
I mean, yeah, losing 18,
Yes.
less than $1,800
Yes.
dollars. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure if I said, Paul, it's gonna be 240 or 260, he's gonna say, okay, I'll do it, but. I don't know.
He's been good to work with. He's done some things for us when we've asked, like all the comments there, I think 150 seems to be reasonable.
About 160.
160, there's the business, man.
I'm saying how about 200?
I was gonna say, I was gonna say 180.
Paul Goody too. I think we might help him out.
And oh yeah, but just another thing he's helped us with is he's made sure this field has been cut in time for us to be able to use this as parking out here during the celebration.
So I guess the other question I would ask is do we have somebody else in line that would use that property?
No.
If he
20
said no.
acres in the city is gonna be difficult for anyone.
Right, well, that's what I
why
mean.
he's asking
So
how many
it's-
acres.
Right,
He's
yeah.
already got his equipment here.
Yeah.
I'd make a motion that we rent it to him for 175.
Oh,
Second.
All right, we got a motion for 175. Start trying to do the bidding and, but I won't. But all in favor, signify by aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. 175. There you go. Passes. All right.
thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right.
Can we tell him that Ford said 200, 240?
I said 240,
probably.
you guys talked him down. I said increase it to 300.
There you go. He comes back like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know, yeah, I know.
You don't seem soft.
Yeah, it's a good point. Any unfinished business? If not, we're gonna move to new business, and on the agenda, we have comprehensive plan. I'm gonna turn that over to Matt.
Okay, you bet. So our comprehensive plan is a little bit stale. It hasn't changed dramatically since it was adopted in the 80s, early 80s at that. And so we're looking to redo the thing, but it's very expensive to redo an entire comprehensive plan. So we're trying to take it in bite-sized chunks. And so what we did was we put out for a grant, and you heard about this previously, with the DLCD to help us pay for a new housing chapter in our comprehensive plan. And in our eyes, it's not just a revision to the housing chapter, it's also going to kick off the entire comprehensive plan revision, because it's going to create a style and a format that we can then replicate in all the other chapters as we move forward. And so we hired a consultant with some of that grant funding. We did some public outreach. We did 2 different surveys to find out what the public is thinking as far as housing. Most of the feedback we got back was exactly what you thought we would get back from the citizens of Millersburg when it comes to housing. We attended a couple of events, talked to some folks at some tables as well. We put together an advisory committee, which was our planning commission, and we did 2 meetings through them. They provided a lot of feedback to us on what should be and shouldn't be in that housing chapter. And the next steps for that are that we're ready to take it to hearings, and it's going to start at our planning commission. And then after that, naturally, it will come to you folks as a amendment to our comprehensive plan. And so we just wanted to really quickly bring this forward to you as an FYI, touch base. I didn't want you to have it coming at you cold. So if you had any questions now, I'm happy to answer those. But this is really just a short update to say, hopefully sometime in December, you folks will be seeing it, maybe early January. That's the plan. Any questions on that?
Appreciate the update. And then housing chapter, what would be in there? Is it like density or just,
Density's in there. It's, the existing housing chapter is a lot of data background and data analysis. And then at the end, it has some policies. And we're taking a different approach and we're following along the footsteps of a lot of other cities. And what they're doing is really kind of taking a diet to this instead. And the whole section is losing a lot of weight. We've taken a lot of the analysis and stuck it into a separate document. And in the comp plan, it's just going to be 4 or 5 paragraphs and then policies. And that's it. And the idea is that this really difficult to read document for the public is going to get a lot simpler, a lot more user friendly, a lot more graphics and illustrations, that kind of thing. And so the new policies do contain some policies regarding density. We're hoping that when you folks see them, you're really going to like what we bring forward to you. It looks a lot different than our current comprehensive plan. We worked a lot with the previous mayor to make sure that everything that he wanted to see fixed in there was fixed. And he was really pleased with it before he left for Idaho. So hopefully what we bring forward to you, you're going to be able to stand behind. It does mention density occasionally. If we didn't, the state would slaughter us. But we were very strategic about how we approached it. Because that was something, as you can well imagine, we heard in volumes of when we reached out to the public. And the Planning Commission echoed that as well. And so we treated that with very kid gloves. But we think what we've got is going to satisfy the state and the constituents here in Millersburg.
yeah.
It was a real challenge.
There is a lot of, as
Yeah.
we all know with the state. Perfect, yeah. Anything else, Matt? On that? All right, thanks for the update. Moving on to the heritage tree, which is back to you.
Matt, again, you bet. Okay, so we received an application for a heritage tree designation. And the address of that heritage tree designation, we showed it on the screen here for you, is 4658 Obsidian. And that's here on the screen. This is a closer view of that property, and you can see that the trees he's actually requesting that on are highlighted here by the arrow in the backyard of the applicant. And here's an actual image of those trees in his backyard. And the only criteria that we really have from our code, it doesn't say a lot about heritage trees, but it does have one criteria that's up here on the screen, and that is that the tree has significance to the community. That's the only criteria. And so at this time, staff is actually recommending denial of this designation because we feel that because those trees are located in the applicant's backyard, they're not very visible to the community. Those don't really have a relationship with the community, like you might see a tree that was near a right-of-way or in a park or something like that. And because we felt that this didn't really have a relationship with the community, it didn't really have the significance to the community to satisfy that trigger. And then lastly, there was some question regarding the standing with this applicant. I'm going to read a little bit here from the staff report because it was crafted with the help of some bigger minds than mine. The subject trees encumber an existing access and utility easement that is convertible to a public right-of-way upon the request of the city of Millersburg. Said request was made by the city on May 18th, 2022, prior to this application being filed with the city. Accordingly, the applicant's standing as an owner of the trees is at issue. While the present denial is not made based on a lack of standing, the city in no way waives its position with regard to its right with respect to the above referenced right-of-way. Regardless, the designation of heritage trees being within an access, utility, and right-of-way is problematic and further supports the denial of this application as well. So that's the entirety of the presentation I have. Our staff recommendation is here on the screen. We have a suggested motion on the screen here as well.
Okay.
Before any motion's made, I just wanted to clear, I think I kind of have a conflict of interest with this one, so I'm going to abstain from any votes on this.
Okay, all right, appreciate that. Any comment from community online? All right.
I'm not seeing any.
So just to be clear, Shana, can you make sure the record reflects that Councilor Hickam has said he's abstaining? Thank you.
So we made a request on May 18th, 2022. The applicant received that request on May 20th, and then on 7/11 filed a heritage tree application. Okay. I get the timeline. Thank you.
I think we had good detail and the staff report shows that. We have a motion?
Forrest, do you have any input on this?
It's all at staff level. I believe that the staff report says it well.
Thank you. I move that the city council deny heritage tree permit TRE 22-03.
Second.
All right, we have a second on the motion. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes to deny. All right, thank you. Thank you for the report and information. And then we have final on the agenda here is Jacob contract amendment. And I'm assuming we're going to be talking about that.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Janelle.
So you have before you a request for a contract amendment with Jacobs Engineering. This is amendment number 16 to our contract. So we've had an ongoing engineering services contract, and when we have tasks that come up, we often amend them into the contract, and that's what's being proposed here. So this is for engineering and design of a new street and buffer / linear park along Concert Road within our industrial property. Sorry, the buffer between Concert Road and the new road within our industrial property. We have a pretty aggressive construction schedule proposed to meet development timelines that are being proposed on that property. And that is incorporated into the engineering contract just to help us meet those. So we have a couple of different packages, an early construction package, and then a balance of the project, which make this a little more challenging project to deliver. We're proposing that we contract this to Jacobs rather than going out for proposals from multiple engineering. One, because we have a contracting mechanism already in place. We have timelines that we won't be able to meet if we go through a process of going out for proposals that will take several months. They have a history with the site and with the city, so they know the site constraints, they know our needs as a city, and they have a team ready to go on this. They have the depth of staff to deliver this with 2 concurrent teams basically running on both packages to meet the timeline. And then we may need to utilize some different contracting methods to procure materials. It just depends on what's going on with the market and the supply chain at the time. And they have expertise in helping us through that. They've been doing it with some clients lately through that. So staff would recommend that we award this contract amendment. The not to exceed amount is $1.67 million, and that is to be paid on time and materials as tasks are authorized in writing. So we're asking you to authorize the amendment, but then staff will need to give them authorization in writing for each task that is in there as we go. So it is also structured so that if we did decide to put the project on hold for any reason, it can be wrapped up at the end of one of those design phases and shelved for future use. So there's a little bit extra built in there in order to be able to do that at the end of any given phase. Of course, if that were to happen, it wouldn't happen with every phase. So some of that money would remain unspent. So I can answer any questions that you have. We would actually like to get going on this as soon as possible to help meet those construction deadlines, at least with the initial design, which would be laying out the vertical and horizontal alignment of the road for the whole project, which is the first step that we need to do.
Safe to assume you would report those authorizations in writing in the next month's staff report?
Yes.
And then recommendation on this letter says approval of amendment number 16 to CH2M Hill Inc. contract for professional services.
So Jacobs is the parent company now. Our original contract was under the legal entity of CH2M Hill, so our contract still says CH2M Hill on it.
Okay.
That's why the amendment says that. We're actually been discussing changing the contracts over to Jacobs in the future, but that's going to, take some contracting work and legal people, and we haven't dove into that yet.
High priority. But do we need to change then if
Well, I would add
Yeah.
CH2M Hill to that.
Yeah, that's all we do.
And I would request one additional add to that, and that you are approving the city manager to sign as well.
I don't know.
And just as Janelle mentioned, this is for 1.67, even 1.67 million. Even though we probably won't expect to see all of, not going to see that all expended in 1 year, there's a good chance that we'll probably be coming back with a budget amendment because will exceed the amount. So you probably see that in a couple of other budget amendments in the next few months.
one other thing I don't know if I added, this does include geotechnical site work as well. That is wrapped into this contract.
And if I understood you right and what I read in here, so it looks like we're estimating based on and trying to do something with the contract just based on time and material basis. So I'm sort of trying to capture some of that inflation cost that may or may not happen. So I would hope we look at it too, that if costs do go down for supplies, we benefit in that aspect, not just the contractor benefiting if costs go up.
So this is for design and engineering. It's not
Okay,
for
not the actual-
construction yet.
Okay.
So what is built into this is escalation of rates over, because the timeline would span 2 years and through construction even going to a third.
So you have escalations. of
So
labor
that
rates.
is built into the contract, but no, we're not procuring any materials here. It's just labor.
Kevin, I know I joked a little bit about the city manager signing. Are you referring to signing the amendment or the authorizations once the amendment, or both?
It would be for both.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I'd move that the city council approve amendment number 16 to the CH2M Hills Jacobs contract, allowing the city manager to execute said contracts and amendments and authorizations.
Second.
All right, we have a second on the motion. All right, all in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you. It's a big project.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Total bill out approximately maybe 10 million. That's gonna be a big one. Thank you. All right, any other new business to bring forth? Okay, closing public comment? Anything?
I might have a question or a comment on procedures within the city finances, and we need to take that up at a different time, that's fine. But we received a reimbursement, thank you very much, City of Millersburg, for our library card reimbursement. Took 2 signatures for the staff to sign a check for $80. We, in my personal and professional experience, the only people that monitor the 2 signatures are the drafters of that document. And something for that amount, I think, is a waste of the staff's time. And we might consider increasing that amount to something more reasonable, say $1,000 or $500 instead of requiring 2 signatures for an $80 check. Just
I think it's a good point, and I think we did have that conversation with staff, and I understand at the right time, I think that will probably come forth of potentially changing that. Very good.
So previously, the council's preference was to have 2 signers. I think that's probably due to past. But as we shared at the time, what the bank has told us is they'll only recognize 1. They'll just cash it with a single. A lot of communities, they don't even have live signatures. It's electronic up to, yeah. And we have a number of approvals we go through. There's what, 3 levels, 4 levels before review, before we sign the checks. So if that is something the council is willing, it's something that we would be willing to entertain in both areas. So again, right now, that's one of the things that's, as far as how the checks are printed and stuff. So we have that's the stock, and it's in the program. So those would be some things that we would need to look at changing as we move forward.
when you say we have levels of approval, that's within CASEL, I'm going to assume, and that's all audible. I mean,
It's things that we're reviewing. So, we have review steps that we go through for all of it.
but if
And-
Grove Mueller wanted to look at an item, they could see the audit trail that who approved it all the way
Yes.
through? Okay, yeah, we need to nix that. So, just my opinion.
And it takes, and it's multiple levels. I mean,
Yeah.
it includes, just so that the public understands, it includes us signing in to the bank.
Yep.
And once the stuff is entered through Casella, we sign in, and then we have to enter codes and stuff to get in the bank account, and then we have to review it there again and approve it as well before the funds are released. So, and then we sign the check.
I think
It's
yeah,
streamlined.
it's just really what hasn't
Since
changed,
we're-
hasn't updated,
No,
and
since
we're on, I
that
think
AP
it's a good,
subject,
yeah.
how much staff time is taken just for that check signing process?
Depends on the week.
Yeah.
Well,
But
and
it's
there's economies of scale. There's
Yeah.
more than one check signed at one time.
Yeah, I get that. I'm hoping
So
there's more than one
we,
check signed at one time.
We run checks weekly. I would say, depending on what's going on.
Well, the person who enters them, I don't know how many hours it takes Michelle, who enters them, several hours generally to enter them.
Let's just get to the signature.
Yeah.
Where you and you
Well,
have
and
to
then,
sign.
and then Sheena reviews them,
Sheena reviews them.
and then they get processed, and then we get them, and one of us will review them in detail. And that depends. It could take 15 minutes. It could take 45 minutes. Depends on the.
Depends what we find, or
week.
if everything's correct, or how big, or,
And then the other one will do just kind of a final check and sign.
I
because there's
understand that.
times, for example, that, there's times of the month when we are looking at our cards, where we
Yeah.
have stuff on the cards.
Yeah.
Those are pretty-
That takes a little bit longer, because even though we check those so what happens, there's a form that's filled out, so we
Yep.
just fill out a form, we have the receipts tied to it, we still come in and check it, just to make sure that everything's lining up
Yeah.
up there, so that will take a little bit longer. Usually myself or Janelle will review them, depending depending where we're at and what we're doing, and then we'll sign. So usually, once one of us is signed, the second one is just usually coming back and signing,
Just the counter signature.
just the counter signature. But I would say probably average 40 minutes.
Yeah, maybe a total of an hour of a week of
Yeah.
bar time combined plus other stuff.
Is there any council member opposed to them working towards getting to a little bit quicker service and signature of one? And I think you have the direction from the council to move forward when appropriate, when you
Yeah.
can, and it makes sense. That's
So, yeah, one of the things I would, that's one of the things that is maybe Sheena can add, so that as they're back there, we can look at what some of that is. That is one of the things. So those things would be things that we want to look at if we want to look at going to this electronic signature. I believe that Casella can do that once we get the final.
Yeah.
Once myself or Janelle, it doesn't really matter which one of us, we can have just, it's gonna be a single signature. The other thing that would be honest with you would help, that we have ran into at times.
Vacation.
We have four signatures on there right now, that can sign, and there's been times that we got down to, even though we knew the bank would only, was good with just one, that there was only one of us available at that point that could sign. So that would help with that too. 'Cause you don't have to
I
worry
got
about
called
that
in
now,
to
as long
sign
as-
one time.
Yeah.
It's like-
For your edification, that all changed after 9/11, and
Yes,
Yeah.
no, we realize that. It's just that there were some previous council members that weren't comfortable
I
going
get it.
away from that. And I understand that, because
Yeah.
you have a fiduciary responsibility. We have a much different systems in place today than we had
Much different.
even 5 years ago,
Yeah.
for tracking and the checks and balances there.
Mike, you have anything to add?
Yeah, that's the only thing I was gonna add on that was no issue with one signature, 'cause more than likely the two signatures was set up more as a not conflict of interest, but a separation of duties. So as long as there's some type of process internally where there's separation of duties between the request, the approval, and the signature of the check, I have no issues.
All right. Sounds good. Got some direction on that. Perfect. I think no closing public, so moving on, lots of council comments, so sort of you captured that. We all good there? All right, then we are adjourned. Look at that. 8:30 just passed. All right, nice work, guys.
Very good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And Ryan, you made it. When you said you're staying, you didn't know who you were in for, or did you? I know. It's like, look over here.
We haven't even talked about this. I need to reach back out.